Hello, hello. Just trying to get my tripod here less crooked. It's been a while again since I've been in here live in this group. I miss having the bandwidth to be able to pop in and chat more regularly with whoever wants to or can show up. This is Krista. I am the owner of the group, even if you don't see me a whole lot in here right now. But yeah, I'm happy to be here today. We're going to talk about comparison, and I'm hoping that with some new support in this group, I will be able to just outsource certain tasks so that I actually can start by just popping in here once a month, actually on a kind of regular basis again, to connect with you all and hopefully support you with where you're at in your life in general or your slow business on purpose. So I'm going to see if I can wear my glasses. Nope, can't see you well. So yeah, today we're going to talk about comparison, and we're not going to focus so much on the issues around it or the various ways it can show up in your life, but you're welcome. If you join me, you're welcome to share your own thoughts, comments, or even after the fact. If you come find this video later, absolutely, just let me know what your thoughts are, what comes up for you, where do you most experience that noise of comparison showing up for you, what does it look like, sound like, feel like, and we'll just go from there. So I feel like while this seems obvious, what I find in my work, I've worked with, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of people, and what I find is that often fear, people tend to identify that more readily. Like they can kind of say, oh yeah, there it is, that's fear. Not always, but whereas perfectionism and comparison can be a little bit more subversive. And they have a lot of sneaky ways of showing up for us that we don't always automatically connect to comparison itself, say. So that term. So I think this is actually helpful sometimes to just have a conversation, hear what's up for other people. And then sometimes that helps us just to start notice things in our own lives. But just, this is by no means an exclusive or all-inclusive list, but comparison generally can show up with just not being present in our lives. So we're always like thinking back about, oh, I should have done this, why didn't I do that? Or we're ahead in the future worrying. Or even let's say you're just in a conversation or you're at work or whatever, but your thoughts are just constantly swirling, you're overthinking all the time, you're worried what other people are up to, what are people thinking about you, instead of just being present in your life and showing up fully to the life in front of you. Social anxiety can be tangled up with comparison. So social anxiety can have various roots, but one thread of that can actually be this struggle with comparison. So sometimes we just avoid trying, similar to with perfectionism, we just don't show up at all, we don't even bother trying. We feel stuck, we might experience low self-worth, lots of judgment, and judgment often crowds out curiosity when we're really struggling with comparison. We can end up expending all of our energy worrying about not measuring up or keeping up or not being good enough, or what are other people thinking about us, or even just kind of swirling a little bit in like jealousy, envy, instead of using that precious energy to focus on your values and the things that really light you up and the things that matter most to you, or even what you say you want and need. So it reminds me of how when as women or just as humans, if we are so focused on our bodies, like not being good enough, not being thin enough, not being whatever, like we're using up all of our energy and our focus for something that in no way serves us. It just tears us down. And just imagine what happens if we can harness all of that beautiful energy and creativity and curiosity and apply it to the things that, the relationships, the goals, the whatever that really mean the most to us. There's fear of missing out that gets us chasing all the shiny things. And so I'm not going to keep going, but there are a lot of issues that come when we struggle with comparison. And I do want to say, like any part of being human, I don't think we need to worry about judging ourselves too much. Actually, judgment tends to not actually be a very successful way or positive motivator for us to actually create positive, sustainable change in our lives. So always being aware of judgment is a good idea. We want to focus on being kind to ourselves, self-compassionate, own what we want, own what's up in our lives, and then take action. So one of the things that I really focus on in my work is this little teeny idea about trying to help people just create a pause in their life. Because if you're familiar with that Viktor Frankl quote that I've shared many times, and Teresa, the moderator in this group now, she shared it yesterday, and it's something like, there is a space between impulse and response. I'm getting it wrong, and in that space lies our freedom and our power, something like that. So, but I find this one idea incredibly powerful but necessary if we want to live on purpose. No matter what our specific goals or circumstances, if we want to live an intentional life where we're not just being pulled to and fro or acting on our old fears or those old instinctive behaviors, then we have to disrupt the pattern. And so when we can learn to just disrupt by a little pause, what it does is create some space for us to notice, examine, and then just choose our response moving forward. And the more we do that, we get quicker and stronger at it. And that's where we really start to experience a different, greater life satisfaction, a greater sense of agency, and I would argue just more joy and just being really present or showing up fully to our lives in every season. So I am going to go into, I actually am going to just offer 6 questions that you can consider. You could take a note, or the video will stay in here. You can at any time revisit it if you want to just listen right now, and then come back later and take notes maybe. But I'm just going to start by offering 6 simple questions, super, super simple. And then I'm going to break down each one a little bit more with the intention of offering you an idea for each of how you can use this question to quiet the noise of comparison in your life, or even just begin noticing how it's showing up for you. So the questions, I'm just going to read through each one, are, who am I and what do I truly want or need? Number 2, what does enough, quote unquote, enough, look, sound, or feel like for me in this season of life? Number 3, where do I have a leaky boundary in my life? Number 4, what story am I listening to? Number 5, how am I outsourcing my well-being, happiness, or even sense of purpose? And number 6, how am I or how can I how am I taking imperfect action toward what I say I want or need? Or how can I take imperfect action toward what I say I want or need? And that's actually a really great question for every day, I find. So I'm just going to, as I mentioned, break down each one of these questions and just kind of discuss it briefly. Feel free to leave me a comment, and if I can see them, hopefully that'll be fine. Or come on back and you can ponder and then come on back and leave a question or comment later if you'd like. So obviously, like anything that I'm going to bring up in this group or in my work elsewhere, they're big conversations, and so I'm just choosing some things that pop out to me today. But they're not random in that I apply these to my life, and I have done for years. I work with other people on doing this work, and I see the positive results. So they're not random, and also the conversation could go far bigger and wider. But that's where I would invite you to kind of personalize it and really think about let these little seeds simmer a little bit and think, okay, notice what's coming up for you. So let's start with number one. I'm going to go back. The question was, who am I and what do I truly want or need? So self-awareness is a starting point. Whenever we desire growth or change or new possibility, self-awareness helps us get a sense of who we are, where we are, acknowledging kind of the full messy truth of where we are right now, and then we can decide, well, what's the next right step forward? If we don't do this work of gathering information about who we are and how we are and kind of the vision we want for our life and our core values, our priorities, then we are never going to get out of the trap of comparison. Because if we're not doing this work for ourselves, we're just constantly going to be outsourcing. We're going to be looking around to try to get our sense of direction from other people, from rules, from, fads, from the latest book, from whatever, our best friend, whatever's happening outside of us. So we really want to get practiced at building in some time and space in our lives to start gathering information about our wiring, our personality, our tendencies. This could even be just truth-telling about the circumstances of our lives. So an example would be, if you are just factually, right? Like, let's say that you have a disability, or you live in chronic pain, or you're tending to an aging parent, or you have 4 little people homeschooling at home right now. Like, just, maybe you're in a period of relative financial ease, or perhaps, you've just lost your job. Like, it's like these conditions or these circumstances of our lives, it's important to just acknowledge what is. Acknowledge, so our wiring and our personality, and ideally, obviously this is a big conversation in and of itself, but I want to at least point out that I really do believe this idea that vision, it doesn't have to be complicated or fanciful or but it's sort of like creating this picture of who and how we want to be and some of the details of our life. And in doing this work, it will evolve. It's not a one-time thing where you're going to come up with this mystical idea and then magically get there one day. It's because life just isn't like that. And honestly, we don't even know for sure some of the beautiful possibilities in front of us or the hard stuff. We don't need to know all of that. But what happens is when we do some work to create a bit of a vision for our lives, then we have a sense of direction. If we get pulled off path, it's okay. We pick ourselves up, remind ourselves where we're heading, and we just keep moving forward like inch by inch. So because some of these ideas are bigger, and if you want an idea about where else you can learn more about this, or even, if you want me to talk about something more in depth another time, just let me know. So tangled up in this idea of who am I and what do I really want or need, I really highly recommend that you identify 3 to 5 core values for this season of life. You may find that these are overarching values, that they never seem to really change for you. That's great too. But it's okay also if you don't know, and you're just sort of trying this on for size. Just think, well, what do I most care about? Or what are these deepest beliefs about life, or what I want my life to be like, or what I want the world to be like, that feel true enough today? And just write those down on a sticky note, check in with them. And in particular, every time comparison starts to kind of sneak up in your life, remind yourself of, this is what I care about. Yes, there's other good things. Yes, I can admire and respect what other people are up to, but I don't have to do all the things. I don't have to walk their path, or even not everything is for this season. So when we start to examine kind of our wiring, we might gather information from personality tests. We might kind of just tell the truth about the circumstances in our life, our body, our relationships, our finances, whatever. We might start to just kind of tell the truth about what we want. Sometimes owning that is really hard work, and even owning it if it was never modeled to us, or we want something completely different from what is familiar to us or whatever. It can be a little scary. But even just telling the truth to ourselves can be a really good starting point. And I recommend getting it on paper. Don't just do it all in your head. You might do a lot in your head, but then I really do recommend writing down some of the things that you want or need. Figuring out who and how we choose to be is also really important, because our learning about our wiring. So I'll give you an example. When I'm talking about wiring, it can be things like, I'll use myself. I am a strong introvert, a highly sensitive person. I have wrestled a lot with anxiety and suicidality in my life. The suicidality for me isn't like constant, but it's certainly been a thing. I have lived in chronic pain most of my life. And so that impacts kind of how I can show up and how much white space and rest I need in my life. I know my core values. So for example, contribution or purpose is a driving motivator for me. Freedom is extremely important to me. And that means a few different things to me, but those are just a couple examples of core values that those really don't waffle. They don't change for me. And so, I'm going to be checking in with that a lot, because so it's hard to know where to interject examples, but I'll just throw one out. So I've been building a business for 4.5 years, and okay, let's just talk about freedom as an example. So one of the things that means to me is that I not only have a lot of room to just meet the needs of my family, whatever's going on, I have a lot of room to honor my wiring and what I need. So I'm not going to make my own mind, body, spirit health secondary to business. That my family and my overall health actually come before my work, but my work is tangled up in my values. And so this past year, where I've needed, my priority is grieving, being present for my family, or even last year before my son died, I was showing up for him and for my daughters. So that means I had to make some hard choices. That means I let go of some of my biggest clients. I had to kind of shift some of my immediate goals and so forth. And so if I let my brain get pulled off and start noticing what other people are up to, so one example is I was offered a book deal right before my son tried to end his life the first time. I was offered a book deal, and I said no, because I needed to be present for him. But then I see other people getting book deals, and I can feel this like I want that. But what's really cool is when I come back and I check in with my core values and my vision for my life, what I see is, oh no, I don't want that right now. Actually, I'm exactly where I want to be. I've made the choices that align with my values, align with who and how I want to be in the world, and I'm actually building the life that I want. And so it's very, very anchoring when we start to notice things and kind of get tipping into comparison. Come on back to those values. When I talk about thinking about who and how we want to be, I'm often, what I'll do is recommend that you just like with your values, I say, just choose 3 to 5, put them on a sticky note, check in with them daily. You can choose what I call mind, body, spirit intentions. And while a value is kind of about like our deepest core beliefs, the mind, body, spirit intentions are more about like me personally right now in this season. And that could even be like the next 6 months, the next 12 months. Who and how do I choose to be? Because who I am is not fixed. Our personality and wiring and circumstances impact us, no question, but they don't the only way we stay in a box is if we choose that. So the more that we gather self-awareness, we realize, oh, okay, I see why I'm doing this, why I react this way, why I struggle here. But what we see is we have power of choice. We can start to kind of learn, grow, strip away some of the wounding, do our own healing work with appropriate people, whatever. And we have a choice to keep becoming. So becoming more fully ourselves. So these mind, body, spirit intentions, they're not, they are aspirational in a sense, in that, I want to become this person. But more than that, what I would love for you to think about is that like today I get to choose to be this. Not perfectly, but also I get to choose. So an example, one of my mind, body, spirit intentions for this season is brave. So I'm not just thinking of it in the sense of being aspirational, like one day I'm going to be brave. And, no, today I'm choosing to be brave. Am I also afraid? Mm-hmm. Do I also, tell the truth about hard emotion? Yep. Well, also, I think that is brave. But, will I always act perfectly brave? Maybe not, but who cares? I'm not aiming for perfect. So it's like we can remind ourselves, actually, I can choose this. It's not about figuring it all out today. It's not about doing it perfectly, whatever that is. It's just about a power of choice and building that muscle that actually is what's happening every time we do this is we're putting down these deeper, stronger roots of self-awareness and self-compassion. And that actually helps us with resilience and keeps us strong and anchored no matter what else is happening in our lives. So when we ask ourselves this question, who am I and what do I really want or need, we can know that this is going to change as we move through seasons of life, and it should. It's not static. We don't have to be afraid of change. Sometimes we grieve what was, and that's actually normal, and that can be healthy. But it is going to change. And honestly, when we look at life with more curiosity, we open up to joyful possibility. We really can. It's like we shake off those shackles of comparison, perfectionism, and fear, and we just kind of step out into the life in front of us with more confidence, more openness, more flexibility. And actually, we can experience a lot of joy even as we walk through challenging circumstances. And finally, for this point, I'm just going to pop out this one little idea. One thing that happens that I certainly see when comparison is kind of sneaking in is we can just even pause and say, but do I really want that? So it could be anything. Like, let's say you kind of envy, let's say one of your best friends just went back to school and she's getting her master's in whatever. And you kind of admire that. And you're like, oh, like, should I do that? So comparison is kind of coming up around that. One little thing that we can do is really just pause and say, but do I really want that? Or am I willing to, if I say I want that, am I willing to do what it takes to achieve that? And see what comes up for you. And consider that particular action or choice in line with your values and your mind, body, spirit intentions. So I'll just use the examples I already brought up. Freedom is really important to me. And let's say I'm kind of envious of something that somebody else is doing. And when I really check in, I think, oh, they're like hustling, man. Like they're working more than full-time hours. They're having to make a lot of hard choices about letting go of more sleep and letting go of, family time or whatever. Is that something I'm prepared to do? If not, let go. Just let go, even if that want right now. And it doesn't even mean you're letting go of it forever. It just means that right now, in this particular season of life, with my energy, my priorities, I actually don't want that or need it or whatever. So I find that can be helpful. You guys have any questions or thoughts? I am not seeing any pop up, but sometimes with Facebook things, there's a delay. So I just want to make sure I'm not ignoring you. The second question, I feel like this is going to be too long, so I might have to do a lot less talking in between for each point. Number 2, what does enough look, sound, and feel like for me in this season of life? So this is a question I actually ask myself a lot. And I kind of play with it and challenge myself with it. Comparison, it rises up in so many different situations, right? Like it can be about work and relationships and money and your body and all these different things. And so I find that this question can get me kind of grappling and examining where I'm at. And so basically just what is enough right now? And that could be, well, what is enough in terms of how much I work, our financial needs, or just whatever. Like maybe it's even like in terms of friendship, like what is enough right now? And it's not that we're necessarily looking for sort of the lowest common denominator, but what we're doing is creating, again, a space for us to just ask ourselves, because we're not always very good at asking ourselves what we want or need. We're more usually focused on helping other people, serving other people's needs, or even, just watching what others are up to. And so it just helps me see the truth of what I want or need. So once again, in this season of life, a lot of hard stuff happening. We need my work because it contributes to our family's finances. We need the money, but what is enough right now? Recognizing my core values around, let's say, freedom, also purpose or contribution to the world, helps me adjust my expectations of myself, keep my eyes on my own path, and then just keep stepping out into the life that I want to build right now. So this is not a season of like I'm working 5 to 15 hours a week right now, not working 20 or 30 or 40. I certainly never do, I actually never work full time. But it, what it does is quiet the noise. Because once again, it reminds me that they're doing their business. That's really has nothing to do with me. My job is to continually live my own life and ask myself some hard questions and sometimes make some challenging decisions where we just can't do it all in one season. We do have sometimes competing tensions and desires, and it is what it is. We're just human in this messy world. So number 3, where do I have a leaky boundary? Not everything is for this season. We can't do all the things. And, if you notice yourself chasing all the shiny things, experiencing fear of missing out and all of that, it's hard. And I actually experience this a lot where I want to gobble up all the knowledge in the world. For me, it's more about knowledge acquisition, I think, because I really value learning and sort of like a growth mindset, ongoing learning or becoming. And that is a core value for my life. And so I make space for it and I set aside money for that as well. But I still really need to watch myself where I can lose the joy of the learning because I'm wanting to gobble up all the things. Or perhaps I put pressure on myself to, in 1 week consume all the information that really might take a lifetime to understand. Things like that. When we notice resentment, and so I talk about comparison, perfectionism, and fear together because I see them tangled up together so often. So for me, some of the clues that we need to pause and look for a leaky boundary, resentment is one of the biggest predictors or symptoms. But fear or just being run down, weariness, a lot of comparison, a lot of inner chatter, especially unkind self-talk, judgment, things like that. Those can be good clues to kind of check in and say, okay, where do I have a leaky boundary in my life? And leaky boundaries can look so many different ways, but a few different ways they might look is obviously the media we're consuming. So if it's just a constant barrage, and it's not necessarily somebody's fault, right? They're just living their own life. But we may feel consumed by comparison, or feelings of lack or not good enough or whatever. And so that can be an indicator that, okay, we need to tone this down a bit, set some better boundaries, unfollow or snooze some people online, or just take a couple days off media every week or whatever. So look for leaky boundaries in your life. Look in your relationships. Is there somebody in your life where you meet and every time you walk away from that meeting, it could be on the phone or in person, whatever, you kind of feel like torn down or kind of anxious or icky or whatever? I mean, that could be a sign of a leaky boundary. So, and whether or not that may or may not be specific to comparison, but I still would say that it's okay to notice if we're not being fed, and we do feel kind of like, if we don't feel mutually kind of lifted up from a conversation or a person on an ongoing basis, then they're probably not one of the people that should be in your inner circle, at least, because we want the people in our inner circle to be supportive of us being who we are and really walking out our values on a daily basis. Let's see, another leaky boundary, it would just be like Teresa in the group earlier today, I posted a quote about comparison. It said something like, comparison is an act of violence against ourselves. And I thought that was a really interesting idea to consider. And Teresa mentioned how for her, comparison really comes up when she's, I think what she had said is like, if she's not tending to herself well, so like self-care isn't the greatest. And I really find that too. So we're always more vulnerable if we're worn down, we're weary, and we've kind of neglected the foundation of self-care in our lives. So whenever you feel like that, look for a leaky boundary. Maybe it's like you need to get into bed earlier. You need to say no to a couple things so you can just tend to yourself better, whatever it is. And then that really strengthens us so that we can be quicker to notice the voice of comparison and then to choose a healthy response. Let's see, what story am I listening to? So the stories that we believe are often, they tell us about our worth, our value, where we fit in the world, how we should be or look or, behave or whatever. What stories might come up around scarcity mentality. So if you're comparing yourself because one of your friends, went on a beautiful trip or bought a new home or got a new job or, got a raise at work or something, if we pause and we practice asking, like, what's the story I'm believing right now? We might notice that there is this scarcity mentality where we kind of, it's illogical really, but it's like, we can almost have this panic. Like, it's almost like all the good stuff is getting taken up. And so there's not going to be any left for me. And I'm sure you guys have all heard this before. And it's kind of funny, like when we pause to think about it. But that there can be this root of fear, which is this sort of scarcity mentality that can come up for us when we start noticing comparison yapping. So again, sometimes what this sounds like actually is jealousy, fear, resentment, self-judgment, or judgment of others. So let me know if you ever notice this. Again, this is another symptom that comparison might be at play in your life, is feeling like grouchy or judgmental towards another person. That certainly can be a symptom of perfectionism at play in your life, but it can also be a symptom of comparison. And at the root of that, we might have resentment. And if we go deeper, there might be fear that we're never going to get there to this thing that we want. And another point here is to remember that we can admire somebody and we can respect them and also still know that we don't need to be them. And so let me know what you think about that. I'm just going to repeat it because I actually feel like this was very, very helpful for me. So I can see what somebody's up to and I can applaud them and I could say, oh, look, I love what you're doing, or I can admire their gifting or things. And also that in no way detracts from me or who I am. I have my own gifting. So do you. I'm not made the same as, this other person over there, and we're not supposed to be all the same. So I can admire her and I can cheer her on and I can respect her and I can also love who I am and keep my eyes focused on my work and my path and my values and the people in my life or my circle of impact. And we can own what we want, and this goes back to truth telling, and also keep living fully in the present. So really what I want to focus on here is this idea of both and. And both and helps us live in a place of more flexibility. And so as an example, when I was talking about, I can admire my friend and what she's doing and how she's using her gifting and stuff, and also fully accept and embrace who I am and where I am. I can notice that I'm not quite where I want to be in a particular area of life, and also celebrate all my hard work to get to this point. So both and. I can own the truth of what I want or what I wish my life was like or whatever, and also take full responsibility for continuing to build and just show up to the life in front of me. So I can see like the messy reality of grief or pain or whatever it is, and also say, I'm showing up anyway. So do you see what I mean? So this can actually be really powerful to keep us getting our hands and hearts dirty, to build the life, to build what we want, first of all, to keep moving, walking in our values and in towards that vision that we have for our life, loving ourselves well as we go, and also just challenging some of those stories that if they are left unexamined, they often just keep us mired in despondency, despair, lack, not good enough, etc. So number 5, how am I outsourcing my well-being, happiness, or sense of purpose? So what I want to talk about here is just very briefly that when comparison comes up, if we examine it, often what's happening is we may not realize we're doing this, right? And we may not want to do this, but that's the cool part about this self-examination, is often we're outsourcing our well-being, our happiness, etc. And we do that because, like, let's say we're putting our happiness in somebody else's hands or in an external circumstance. So that could be the new house, the raise, the whatever, your partner being, supportive, whatever it is. And the more that we realize that our well-being and the deepest sense of calm and rootedness, that comes from inside of us, and we can carry that with us throughout circumstances. I'm not talking about Pollyanna, relentless positivity, like all is well and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, like people die. There's bad stuff in this world. We are faced with challenges on a regular basis. This is real life. It's complicated. It's messy. It's really hard sometimes. But the more that we do this work to kind of put down these deep roots, we stay anchored in the middle of the storm. And we realize that, yes, external factors impact me. Not going to deny that. But my ultimate well-being, I'm not going to put that in your hands. So, we're talking about comparison. So let's say I'm not going to put that in the hands of whether or not you approve of me. I am not going to put that in the hands of whether or not I get a book deal. Like, who cares? That doesn't change who I am. That doesn't prevent me or help me. Well, maybe it helps me walk out my values in one new fun way, but there's a million other ways. So I can stop outsourcing my happiness, my calm, my well-being, and life satisfaction, and realize that, or as I realize that honestly that's more an internal thing, I just naturally start tuning out the noise. I'm less interested in what other people are up to. I'm less impacted by other people's opinion of me. I'm more likely to do hard things aligned with my values and what I say I want or need, even if it's going to be like ruffle some feathers, be uncomfortable, whatever. I'm more willing to do that because I'm not outsourcing my well-being. It's when we look outside of ourselves all the time that often the messages come up about I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough, I'm not thin enough, I'm not young enough, I'm not brave enough, I'm never, going to be able to measure up, keep up, whatever. And again, when we realize that who am I trying to measure up or keep up to? If my well-being and my happiness and my strength is an inside job, even my, acceptance and love of myself, approval, if that's an inside job, then I'm less likely to even look outside of me and even consider the idea that I should be keeping up to you, right? Because I'm going to just see, well, that's not my business. Your life is your business. My business is, who do I want to be? What choice am I going to make today to move closer to that? And finally, I'm just going to end here. Imperfect action. How can I take imperfect action today towards what I say or I want or need? Imperfect action is, first of all, it's important. Like, we have to take action in our lives. All the theory in the world doesn't change a thing if we don't take action, right? If we don't apply it to our lives, if we don't practice. So, but again, the focus, of course, for me is on imperfect action, because as a recovering perfectionist, I have had to train myself to just do something. Stop waiting to have it all figured out. Stop worrying about whether it's actually good and just do the thing. And then you can always tweak. You can always learn and grow, and we keep practicing. But for me, it's been just critical that I learn how to move out of fear and out of feeling stuck because of this idea of comparing myself and falling short. And, my marriage improved. I was able to build a business. I've dreamed about owning my own business since I was 16 years old, and I'm going to turn 49 soon. But I never would have done that if I hadn't practiced the idea of imperfect action and just noticing that we have the privilege and the responsibility to build the lives we want to live in and the world we want to live in. And again, we're not going to do it perfectly. So the goal isn't that, it's imperfectly on purpose. That's the goal in my books. It's that we just try, we just show up, we offer the little bit that we have. We don't judge it and allow the fact that we are just human, doing our best in this world, learning as we go, etc. We don't let that stop us, like from speaking, using our voice, or loving people, or taking risks, or trying to operate in our gifting, or even our sense of mission in the world. We take little imperfect action, and we really celebrate that. So celebrate any little choices you make. You fall down, you tip over into that old pattern. Maybe comparison keeps you stuck for a while. You notice what's up. You love yourself well, pick yourself up, keep moving. There's no waiting. There's no we just have to all do this. And, since the focus is comparison, one of the biggest lies that I actually notice or witness that women believe a lot is, she has it all together. She knows what she's doing. She's so brave. She's so whatever. So it's this comparison that makes us think that other people have it easier. Other people must not struggle. And it's true. There is injustice in the world. There is inequality. Some of us also just have a lot of loss or pain or some, at a young age. And it sucks. But here I am. And here you are in this reality. Now what? What am I going to do? How am I going to show up today and keep building and try to stay heart open in the middle of this very messy, complex world? So, okay, 7 ideas. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. And I'm just grateful and thrilled to even just be here today chatting with you. So, all right. See you guys. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.